participants in our seminar. I'd ask you to use a minute or so to just tell us who you are as we get going. If you just open your microphones, we have Mr. Dominic Williams, who is here from the CETL, our administrative assistant, who will assist with some of the logistics details and so on. So if you're having any problem, you can reach out to him. All right, so I'm inviting persons just to tell us who you are, your name, and where you're from in terms of your department and so on. Okay, so Helen is saying she has no mic, Helen Wilkinson. Helen Ann Wilkinson, no mic, thanks for understanding. All right, so those who have no mics or have some serious concern, you could just use the chat then. I think that should suffice to introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning. I'm Maxine Letman Hall. I'm from Mona School of Business and Management.
Okay, thanks, Maxine. So we are from the Mona School of Business. There are about 13 of us and 2 from CETL. So there are quite a few persons in this seminar.
Hello, my name is Tequila Porter. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead now.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tequila Porter. I'm a postdoc at the University of California, San Diego. I'm just here to introduce myself and learn what you guys are doing. I am also interested in research pertaining to substance use, mental health, and HIV prevention, specifically among Black and Brown women. So thank you for having me.
Okay, how did you hear about our seminar, Dr. Porter?
I'm on the job market, so I am hunting for opportunities, and I just looked at different events that you guys are hosting and thought that, this would be a good opportunity to kind of introduce myself and my work and just see what opportunities that, might be available for collaborations and partnerships.
Okay, good. Thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yes. Are there others coming in? I know some people are writing in the chat.
Good afternoon. I'm Shante Rodney. I'm an assistant lecturer of pharmaceutics in the pharmacology and pharmacy section of basic medical sciences.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're inviting persons to just use a few seconds to introduce themselves at this point. Just tell us where you're from in terms of our university, what department and your area, specialty or something like that, your name, department, area of specialty. That's all we will have time for, and we ask you to open your mic. We'll give another minute. And those of us who are unable or feel more comfortable in putting something in the chat, we accept that too. And a number of persons are putting something in the chat. Somebody says they'll be grateful for a certificate if one will be provided. Yes, we can provide certificates. If you are so interested in a certificate of participation, then certainly please reach out to us, reach out in particular to Mr. Williams, who will ensure that you get that certificate of participation. All right, I think we're going to get started, and I am sharing my PowerPoint presentation. And I'm going to go to slideshow and share this presentation. And we're going to do some, I'm going to do a presentation, an interactive presentation, and then I'm going to later on, I'm going to ask you to do a short exercise. So this morning, or afternoon now, it is afternoon here, we're talking about how can we become more of an effective university teacher. And we are introducing and going to use elements of the teaching effectiveness framework developed at the Colorado State University. I'll soon say a few more things about this framework, the teaching effectiveness framework. All teaching and learning activities. I'm sorry, let me get back. Have some objective, and we want to use our learning outcomes. We want to ensure that our learning outcomes are available to us. Develop a definition of effective teaching. So as we go through this activity, let us think about what really is effective teaching and how can I be an effective teacher. Define the teaching effectiveness framework that will be shared with us. We will examine the elements of the TEF, Teaching Effectiveness Framework, determine how the Teaching Effectiveness Framework might assist faculty members to reflect more meaningfully on their pedagogy. So that's one of our objectives, as we go through this Lunch and Learn webinar, and decide on how the TEF might be used to improve our teaching. So we have some decision points to make as we go through this webinar. So I go back to the initial statement I made about the teaching effectiveness framework. So it's a tool, and it was developed at the Colorado State University, and it was to help faculty determine what is effective teaching. Now, effective teaching is a problematic, or good teaching is a problematic statement. What do we mean by that, and so on. So it puts it within some kind of parameters for us. What really is effective teaching? So this framework or this structure, and sometimes my graduate students say, really, what do you mean by a framework? Because we see this statement, we see this phrase used so much, especially in education. It's just a structure. A framework is a framework, just a structured kind of understanding of something, of some concept or ideas and so on within some kind of borderline. So, when we frame something, we put it within a border. And from my own understanding, that's what we are doing in terms of the framework. So we're putting within a structured kind of engagement, putting some kind of structure around it so that we can engage with it in a more profound way. All right. So this basically is the slide teaching effectiveness framework. So this basically is what we are talking about. And as I said, it was developed by the Colorado State University through their Institute for Learning and Teaching. And as you can see, they have 7 components of effective teaching, or these would they would consider these the elements of effective teaching. And I believe all of us are seeing this clearly. So if you notice in the middle, talk about pedagogical content knowledge, and they are all linked. Well, inclusive pedagogy is in the middle. And then student motivation and classroom climate and instructional strategies. What kind of instructional strategies? And feedback and assessment and curriculum and curricular alignment. Inclusive pedagogy is indeed perhaps the centerpiece of this framework. Now, of course, this is a mammoth framework. We're not going to be able to talk about all of these activities. Each of the each component has a little blurb that is provided here. Something is stated about what we mean by inclusive pedagogy, what we mean by student motivation. So do you teach in an inclusive way? And that's very important because inclusive pedagogy seems to be the centerpiece of the framework. It's a student-centered teaching approach that considers all students' backgrounds, their experience, their learning variabilities, and so on. How they look, how they answer questions. Do I immediately respond in a negative or a frowning way to some student if they dress a certain way? If a guy comes in the classroom and he's sagging, he's wearing his pants at his knees in an undergraduate classroom, how do I respond to that kind of student? I might dislike how he dresses, but in responding to him, does that come across? Because inclusive pedagogy says that we're going to take their background, their experiences, and so on into consideration so that we can respond to all our students in an equitable way. Instructors who ensure equitable access to course materials, we foster belonging and address the needs of a diverse student population. And so through our engagements with our students, we create a more robust learning experience for all of these students who are in our care. I'm not going to be able to go through all of them. I just wanted to share with you elements of this teaching effectiveness framework. So effective teaching will take into account inclusivity. It will take into account student motivation and what we're doing to always motivate our students. It will take into account the kind of classroom climate that we seek to develop so that learning is always going to be advanced. It will take into account the selection of instructional strategies. How are we teaching? Are we engaging students meaningfully? Is the classroom active and an engaging environment that advances learning? It takes into account feedback and assessment. Are we continually engaged in feedback, formative and summative? And certainly I imagine that most of us would be involved in a lot of formative assessment activities so that our students can know where they are going. It takes into account curriculum alignment. Whatever we are doing in our classes should be aligned to the curriculum or to the course that we are teaching. And, you know, we shouldn't just be packing things in because we feel it is good for our student. And of course, we talk about pedagogical content knowledge. To what extent are we using methods or approaches to teaching that are really good for the discipline that we're teaching and good for the content, the specialized content that we are teaching? Oftentimes people develop courses, and when we come to the methods of teaching. We just put lecture, discussion. There is no real thought about whether these are the best methods to be utilized to teach that particular course or to teach that particular aspect of the course. Pedagogical content knowledge is really looking at that, the intersection of content and pedagogical expertise. So this basically is an overview of this teaching effectiveness framework. And for those of us who came in a little late, we did call out the fact that this was developed by the Colorado State University, and they have presented on this teaching effectiveness framework over a number of years at conferences and so on. And certainly, I believe they would be willing to present to us here at the Mona campus at some point for a cost, for a fee, of course. So this framework was developed over a number of years, and it certainly took into account a lot of research on teaching. What really is effective teaching? Or is this related to the various domains of learning and to how faculty might grow and develop? And one of the good things about this teaching effectiveness framework is that it really is a package. It provides a collection of practices. It provides rubrics for assessment. It provides resources for instructors and administrators too, because having been developed in an American institution, it is utilized in institutions that have faculty evaluation on an annual basis. And so faculty can use this to begin to prepare for their annual evaluation of teaching and so on. So it is a foundational component of the comprehensive developing and evaluating teaching toolkit. So it's a part of a larger whole. They have developed also this teaching toolkit, and this is a component of this teaching toolkit. So what does this toolkit consist of? We have looked at the 7 essential and iterated domains of effective teaching that we just presented. There is a rubric for each domain, and this afternoon in this session, I will distribute the 7 rubrics for each domain of teaching that is represented in this teaching effectiveness framework. Now, these rubrics are not intended really for evaluation or so on, but for really self-assessment, not for formal faculty evaluation being carried out by an institution necessarily, but really for self-assessment. So I'm going to introduce in this meeting, this seminar, the rubric, the 7 rubrics, so that we can look at our teaching for ourselves, and then we will ask a few to volunteer comments on how they believe the rubric might help all of us to grow and develop as more competent teachers. So in the toolkit, not certainly the rubrics, but certainly there is a goal setting process. So you can look at that for annual review of teaching, practices to improve student learning, materials for instructors and administrators to measure growth, and so on, and recommended process for annual review. All of this is in the toolkit. I must admit that I do not have all the elements of the toolkit, because I believe all of these elements are not free. So I only have the free components of the toolkit that they made available to us. But certainly I believe these are available from the Colorado State University. They are the developers of this TEF. One of the points that the TEF is making is that teaching is developmental. And I don't think we will argue with that. I think we will readily appreciate this fact. I often say to faculty, you know, if I were a good teacher, as I believe I am 30 years ago, you know, if I were as good a teacher as I am today, 30 years ago, I would have, you know, I would have been a great teacher at that time. Because as I grow and develop, I believe I've become better. You know, even though I'm not fully involved in teaching, but over certainly the span of one's career, one should be able to look at your development as a teacher as you move through learning to teach and now teaching with great ease as you look at the content and you determine what elements of the content need to be taught using various methodologies and so on. You select the pedagogical content knowledge that needs to be taught and the supportive strategies that will best engage students in that content and so on. So the TEF, a major component of the TEF is the reflective tool to improve teaching effectiveness. And I'm going to share the rubrics with you that will help us to examine our own teaching and determine how we might improve our own teaching. So that basically is our focus this afternoon, how we can use elements of the TEF to support our teaching to become more reflective practitioners, to grow and develop as better faculty or effective pedagogues, effective teachers, because the TEF is concerned with developing teachers to be the best that they can be, and of course, to ensure that the students will benefit from the wealth of experience that we bring to our teaching and the ways and means by which we are seeking to engage them in the classroom. So, underscoring some of the things we've been saying, this teaching effectiveness framework, which was shared a while ago, is to be used more so as a self-assessment tool. It helps us to understand what we mean by effective teaching. And as I said earlier on, it comes to us from the Colorado State University, and much research has gone into this. And so it is one understanding of what effective teaching is about. And these 7 domains, really, they're calling them, of teaching and how they interrelate and interlock and so on. And we will want to look at these 7 areas of our teaching using the rubrics available. And they make the assumption that effective teaching might be different for some people. You know, not everybody might understand effective teaching in the same way, but effective teaching occurs, they say, when students attain course outcomes and goals that were set by us or the department, you know. And essentially, we are concerned about that our students should rise from our courses, attaining what we had set out for them to achieve. So we are affirming that teaching and effective teaching is a complex thing. It's not easy for us to decide across this university what is effective teaching. And I'm not so sure there is any real understanding, well, I shouldn't say real understanding, but real decision within our university community as to what is effective teaching. I think if I ask the question this morning, a number of us would come up with our own definitions and understandings of effective teaching. But we are using the yardstick given to us by the Colorado State University in this framework to help us to codify our own understanding or put together our own understanding in a more meaningful, hopefully in a more meaningful way. So the elements that we have looked at, but not in detail, of effective teaching are these 7 being listed on this slide. We did spend a minute to talk a little about inclusive pedagogy. I'm not so sure that we have time to talk about everything because I want us to get to a little exercise, but you can look at that, these elements, and if you have questions on them, I'd be happy to talk about them. All right, so we want to look now at these seven elements, and to what extent have we been practicing them? Now, what I have to share with you are the rubrics by which you're going to do your own self-evaluation or self-assessment. And Dominic Williams, Mr. Williams is the admin, and he's going to share with you the rubrics. Mr. Williams, are you there?
I'm here, Doc.
Okay,
Yes,
can you
ma'am.
share with everyone the rubrics? And these were developed by the people who developed the TEF out of Colorado State University. All right, so we have about 16 people. How many persons do we have in the course, in the workshop, Dominic? In the Lunch and Learns webinar?
17.
All right, so can we just, this is the activity. Can we just look at this activity? We will divide into small groups as numbers allow. We want you to divide into small groups as numbers allow. Construct a definition of effective teaching. We won't have more than 10 minutes to do this. Construct a definition for teaching effectiveness. And then you won't be able to look at all 7 rubrics. I suggest that you select one rubric and just ask yourself, where am I in relation to what is being said on this rubric? So do your own self-assessment using one rubric for the purposes of this activity. You cannot do all 7 because we just have 1 hour and we have used up 34 minutes of the hour already. So I'm going to ask you to look at one rubric, and then we can talk about the one that you select in your group, and then we will come back together. So we're going to work for 10 minutes in a group. I'm going to ask Dominic to just divide us into 3 groups of about 5. Can we have that? Or it's 6? How many did you say, Mr. Williams?
It was 17, but yeah, we can do 3 groups of 5. Roughly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Rooms are set.
Okay, so what I I'm gonna go to the breakout room. You said the rooms are sent? Okay.
Yeah.
I only see two people in the last room though.
Which room?
Rooms. And let me just bring back my slides. And for those persons who came in late and did not see the 7 elements of the teaching effectiveness framework, I am displaying it at this moment. I trust you are all seeing my slides clearly. No, you just had a
Not seeing
small.
the screen, Doc.
We're not seeing the slides. Oh, we're just about, I think.
You're seeing them, or
I see CETL.
okay.
No, that's me. Doc, you're not sharing.
Okay, let me see. Perhaps I'm not actually sharing them. So let me go back. Perhaps I'm not actually sharing them. I need to share. All right. You
That's
should be. It says my fault. I'm sorry about that. I don't think I shared them properly. So that's why you weren't seeing the slide. So this is the teaching effectiveness framework that we talked about in the earlier part of this Lunch and Learn seminar. All right, now you just had a group activity where you were talking about what is effective teaching, what is this framework, and you were expected to look at one of the rubrics that we shared with you. The rubrics are for these 7 elements, to really do a self-examination as to my pedagogical content knowledge and how I'm dealing with that domain of teaching. They talk about these domains of teaching. And how am I dealing with inclusive teaching or inclusive pedagogy? Or how am I doing with student motivation in my teaching? Or how am I doing with classroom climate? So you had these 7 rubrics that dealt with these 7 elements of this effectiveness teaching framework or teaching effectiveness framework. Now, what did you think of effective teaching? What was your take on effective teaching? So we had 3 groups and we don't have a lot of time. So if you would just, people would just open their microphones perhaps and let us know, or if you prefer to script it, we didn't create, sometimes we create Google Slides and Google Documents and so on, but we felt that in 1 hour, we really didn't have the time for all of that. So if people would just talk to us about that. Effective teaching, effectiveness framework, what do you make of it? And then for 1 or 2 persons who might want to share their own examination to make it public. This can certainly be a private activity, but we are asking a few persons to make it public and tell us what you thought about it and how you think you might be able to use this to improve your teaching. So group 1, anybody from group 1? Or if I'm asking Mr. Williams to watch the chat if persons are making any comments in the chat that I don't disregard them.
There's one comment. It says the TEF is a tool to ensure both educators and learners are maximizing the educational space to develop future scholars.
Okay, so thanks for that comment. Anybody else? Anybody else want to tell us about, your own examination? I'm really interested in that of your teaching using the rubric, one of the rubrics. Okay, you couldn't do the 7 in such a short time. In fact, you just had time to just barely look at 1 and to think seriously about your teaching.
I thought a lot about the instructional strategies rubric because I personally have a lot of experience with not teaching independently, but with the assistance of other faculty and professors, graduate level learners versus undergraduate level. And I think that's something that I would like to improve is how do I engage undergraduate level learners, because I do think there's a difference in terms of how we present information to undergraduates versus graduate level and kind of the expectation that exists. And so that's kind of where I focused my time in the activity.
Okay, well, there is definitely a difference in expectation of how we engage our graduate students from our undergraduate students. There definitely is a difference. But certainly I find in my own teaching, and I teach largely speaking now, in most cases I'm teaching graduate students. I find that some of the same strategies work very, very well. And I utilize some of these same strategies. I don't know if anybody else would want to comment on that. I utilize a lot of these strategies that you would perhaps use in an undergraduate classroom with my graduate students, and I think they work for me. Yes, we do what would traditionally be understood as seminars or graduate seminars, where students are presenting and you're engaging with each other, and certainly that is important for a graduate level classroom. But there are also opportunities for people to engage in think, pair, share, and group activities, and going to Google Slides and using the various technological tools to engage each other and so on. And in many cases, I find that students respond very well to these kinds of activities. Anybody else? How did you use the rubric? I really want us to focus on the rubric, because I think a great part of this teaching effectiveness toolkit are the rubrics that are presented, that we can utilize them to examine our teaching and for ourselves. It doesn't have to be at the behest of the institution or the department as that. Yes, Judy, I see your hand. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I reflected on the rubric on classroom climate.
Yes.
And I teach both face-to-face and also online teaching. And I realized that even if I engage, and I have, different ways of trying to engage my students, I find it quite challenging, developing a vibrant classroom climate within the online space. Because sometimes you're teaching in the evening, people are in the classroom, but they are driving. So even if you want to engage them, maybe on Padlet, they cannot complete things. So sometimes it resorts to us just doing, brainstorming, or you just do plenary discussions. Because I realize as well, breaking them into groups, you break them into groups, and there's minimum engagement again. So I'm still just trying to figure out, how do I ensure that, the vibrancy of the classroom environment is great on learning, on online, compared to the experiences that I have in the actual classroom.
Well, yes, thanks for that. I suspect that in an online classroom, the eyes of the teacher the eyes are not there to see what's happening. You do have greater control, I believe, when you're in the classroom, because you can just look at a student and they might begin to talk within the group, or you can walk around in a classroom and people will talk. I find that in the online classroom, and I do a lot of group work in my graduate classes, oftentimes students are just not in the groups. You put them in a group and then they disappear, and it's easy to say we had no internet, and that might be true. I don't know when it's not true or when it is true. So I accept it that it is true, but I'm always concerned about that. It's a little more difficult in the online classroom to create that engaging atmosphere, if the students do not decide to cooperate with you. And one of the things about teaching, and I always say it, when I meet new teachers, we have to bargain with our students, as it were. We have to encourage our students or motivate our students to participate, to take part, because this is how they're going to learn. And we will not necessarily be able to convince or have a breakthrough with all our students, but we have to continually and consistently encourage them to be a part of the classroom and to contribute, and as it were, help them to understand that we are available to them, to work with them in meaningful ways. Not so sure that we're going to have much more time for many more comments. Ellen Ann Wilkinson, it is is saying to all of us, it's a different type of engagement which is likely to be incorporated in real life, thus great memory retention. Okay. It's a different type of engagement, I imagine. Dr. Wilkinson is saying in the online classroom.
Yeah, we are aware it's a different kind of climate, but the question is, how do we ensure that, with all the challenges, we are actually, developing a vibrant classroom climate when you give people Padlets, when you break them into groups, when you do things that you think will improve or engage them, but there's no uptake. What do you do?
Okay, well, you will, and my point is that you will not be able to, if you have 30 students, you perhaps will not be able to engage all of them. All of them will not do it. I think consistency of trying, and motivation from the very outset, from the beginning of the class, from the beginning of the course, is perhaps what will help help them to recognize what this means for their education, because sometimes they do not, especially if it's an undergraduate class. And there are times when you might not necessarily be able to get them to be as engaged as you would want them to be as engaged with the content. If you can get 50% engaged, then perhaps you can take comfort in that. But you're not going to get, I don't think you'll get all. I don't know if anybody else want to shed any light on that or to comment on that, especially, since this is a problem that I believe all of us face.
If I may, what I have done is to kind of create structured questions around, and I go around one. The graduate classes tend to be a little smaller than the undergraduate, so it's well for my faculty, so it's easier to kind of engage them rather than you in the graduate session you'd be dealing with 15 versus in the undergraduate space 150. It's a little different in terms of level of engagement and what you're expecting in terms of participation. Gamification is another one that I realize across the teaching spectrum, whether it is graduate or undergraduates, tend to grab the students. So those engaging things that are exciting, I think it's cultural too. We're colorful people and we kind of like when things are exciting. So I try to structure it, especially if it is an online session, with things that are a lot more engaging in terms of our break, like a little play or something that they can do if it's face to face or something that they have created in terms of their approach with constructivism. So they like to see themselves reflected, something engaging, and that's my approach in terms of getting them a little more engaged.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kareem. Dr. Muturi, I'm going to ask you to let us talk to you some more. I would like you to talk to Michelle Stewart McCoy, she's soon to be Dr. Michelle Stewart McCoy. She's our online learning specialist here at the CETL. And I believe, she would be a good person for you to talk to, as she understands the online learning dynamics far more than I do. And she might be able to give you, some of the tricks of trade that you might want to try out in some of your classes. So I would invite you to talk to you can see us. We have consultation sessions, and perhaps you can have a consultation session with Mrs. Stewart McCoy sometime during this semester and see if you can't get one or two ideas that might be useful going forward. All right. Well, colleagues, it is after 1, and I want to thank you so much for coming to this session. We have the framework available for you. We have the slides available from which you can get the framework if you so desire. And I posted the framework in a number of the groups. And we are going to close off now as you think about effective teaching and how these 7 areas are manifested in my own teaching. These 7 areas of effective teaching. How are they manifested in my teaching? Thank you.